Okay, you know what? Let's first get into our featured reviews. Let's start off with this Western. Bruce and Eric, just right off the top of your head, can you name, since we talk about movies that we love, right off the top of your head, can you name one of your all-time favorite Westerns? Just Rorschach test. Just for me, I'm gonna say right now, the first movie that comes out of my head, I'm gonna say it. It's Once Upon a Time in the West. That's what my pick. There's actually, you know what? I'm gonna rejig that. It's actually Duck You Sucker. I like Duck You Sucker a lot better. Eric and Bruce.
I mean, we've mentioned it a couple of times, but The Great Silence is really good, and
The Great
Cemetery Without Crosses. Like I saw that the first time this year, and that hopped right up there. As far as like westerns,
yeah, Eric Holmes was mentioning spaghetti westerns, very good spaghetti westerns. He got us into spaghettis, and then Eric and I during one week we talked about The Great Silence as well, and Eric also covered it in previous episode, Cemetery Without Crosses. Sorry, yeah. Eric, go ahead. Yeah,
but as far as westerns, I really like The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford. That's I mean, it's definitely a slow burn, but it's just one of those movies. Like, it's one of my comfort movies. I can always put it in and just be like, and then of course A Wild Bunch, because that movie's just badass.
Very good choices. Also I guess Eric Holmes likes seeing Casey Affleck out by the wheat fields or something like that. That's a very interesting. Yes. Oh, what?
Kirk Douglas and Posse. That was a really good one too.
Probably, yeah, you're a huge Western guy. Bruce, are you a Western guy like me and Eric? Are you? Is this a Western? Is this a genre that you need to be more exposed to?
I'm probably sat right in the middle. I would have said Once Upon a Time in the West too, probably for like revisionist artsy Westerns. I really like Dead Man. Recently, I really enjoyed Slow West.
Yes,
Slow West is really good. Very good.
Michael Fassbender is in that one. Very, very good movie.
Yeah, those are all really good movies. I don't know. Does Treasure and Sierra Madre count as a Western?
I would say it has its moments. Yeah,
it has cowboy hats and horses. I guess that's all.
Well, I don't know. For Old Henry, I don't know if it's a revisionist Western. It's okay. The good thing about it is it's led by Tim Blake Nelson. We all know him from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? He was also, we know him as in Westerns because he opened up the anthology, Coen Brothers anthology movie, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Here, he's a titular character, a widowed farmer living out in the middle of nowhere.
Why'd you settle here? Up at dawn, working the crops, rain or shine.
You'll discover there's worse arrangements.
Paul's a good man, Wyatt.
I ain't him.
Stop fretting about it.
You know I saw what's in the back of that closet.
I've done things I wish I could take back. I best go look for the rider.
Is he alive?
Barely.
What do you think happened? Some kind of shootout?
Stay here and keep an eye on him.
Who the hell are you? My pa found you. Well, go fetch him. Won't you put my gun in my satchel? I don't know what you're talking about. You gotta think long and hard on what you got yourself into.
Funny, I was about to tell you the same thing.
Riders. There's gonna be 3 of them.
I'm Sheriff Sam Ketchum. We've been scouting for a man on the run. He's dangerous.
They ain't lawmen. They bank robbers.
Your last name McCarty?
That's right.
First name?
Henry.
Why they didn't shoot you dead, I don't know.
I got this crazy idea. There might be more to old Henry than meets the eye.
Some shaky old farmer?
He didn't hold that pistol like any farmer I've ever seen.
Listen to me. What's going to happen will happen quick.
You got a lot of fight for a farmer.
You have no idea the hailstorm you fixing to let loose.
Consider me properly warned. Where'd you come from?
Every place on earth but this.
Who are you, Pa?
obviously this middle of nowhere. Bruce Perky is actually tracking down exactly where this middle of nowhere is. It's this interesting house, and he's a farmer. He has a kid who maybe the kid might be about 16 or 17. The kid's ready to move out of the farm and actually go out to the frontier towns and explore his own world. He's been sheltered by his widowed dad for so many years, and he's sick of it. But old Henry, one of these days, he's out on the horse, and he sees an injured, mysterious man. He's bloodied, wounded, might be dying, and near him is a satchel of cash. So what old Henry does, he decides to bring the stranger home along, and he hides that satchel of cash, and he tries to nurse this man to health. Eric Holmes, do you believe no good deed goes unpunished? Do you believe in that phrase, or do you think it's always good to do good deeds?
I think many bad deeds go unpunished.
Oh, many bad deeds. Very interesting. Well, this is a good deed that, well, I don't know. It would sometimes being a good Samaritan, it could lead you to different outcomes. And this outcome, without giving too much away, is old Henry, by doing this good deed and helping he's trying to nurse this guy back to health. This mysterious strangers, I guess you mentioned posse. Maybe there is a criminal element led by Stephen Dorff who are out to hunt him down, grab the cash, and they'll do whatever it takes to get this man, either eliminate this wounded man, and then maybe kill anyone who he crosses paths with. That is the ultimate plot summary of Old Henry. Very lean and mean, very nothing fancy about it. But what's interesting is Eric Holmes was the first one out of our three to actually watch this. Eric Holmes, tell our listeners what your really strong reaction to Old Henry was, and why did you feel this so strongly about this Western?
Well, this movie's a real meat and potatoes kind of thing. It's one of those type of movies that similar to The Djinn. That's the first one that comes to mind, where it's just the thing, and it focuses on being the best version of that thing. In this case, a Western. It just focuses on its basic story, and focuses on the characters, and sets up, well, first of all, Steve Dorff is leading the posse that comes to old Henry's ranch, house, farm, whatever you want to call it, and they're looking for that guy that old Henry found laying on the ground with a bunch of money. This is I don't know, my brain just went dead.
Well, this movie's 99 minutes. Your brain just went dead. All I know is
the thing about this movie is it just did that thing where it was really focused on the simple story it was trying to tell. It wasn't trying to get too clever with anything. It wasn't, and at the same time, it wasn't dull. It kept ramping up the suspense. The longer this movie went on, the more I was loving it. And by the time it finished, I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be in my top 5 of the year, easy.
Top 5 of the year because you love Western so much, or top 5 is just because like you're a storytelling guy? This just, like you said, because of the execution of the story?
Well, it was good to see a Western because we don't get many of them. And then the ones we do get, sometimes are pretty good. Sometimes they're okay. We just, Westerns kind of, they're not dead, but they, certainly don't make very many of them. And when they make them and they're as good as this one, I'm just like, holy fucking shit. as soon as it was over, I'm like, well, I got to make sure Bruce and Greg saw that so I can watch it again, because we'll have so many views that we can do. And I had to go back and watch it a second time. And it was just it's kind of like one of those like I said about Assassination of Jesse James is one of those, first of all, this isn't like Assassination of Jesse James.
Yeah.
And the pacing.
Yeah, it's not sprawling.
Yeah, this is probably it's probably somewhere. I wasn't gonna say it was closer to Young Guns, but Young Guns is more like this one gets action heavy towards the end. It's somewhere in between there, like in between not quite as over the top as Young Guns and not quite as slow as Assassination of Jesse James. It's just right in that sweet spot, right in the middle. Gives you just enough character and just enough action, and it gave Stephen Dorff a role that I fucking love. And I've been waiting for Stephen Dorff to be this good. I knew he could be. It's just like so there are certain actors that like they just don't get that role. And Stephen Dorff finally got that role. I'm so happy for him, and I was so glad to see him in this. And then, of course, Sam Blake Nelson's awesome. Trace Adkins, everyone in this is awesome. Trace Adkins, like I'm not familiar with him as an actor. I know he's a singer, but I'm not familiar with him as an actor, but he played the John Goodman role pretty well in this, I think.
Yeah, Trace Adkins plays the brother-in-law of Old Henry. And what's funny about Trace Adkins, he's a very physically imposing figure in this movie. Though he is still physically imposing and he's a tough guy, it's a different type of role for Trace Adkins. All I remember Trace Adkins for is for his work in The Lincoln Lawyer. And like you said, Eric, he is also a singer-musician as well. Now, Bruce, let's get to you. What did you think of Old Henry? Did you feel that it was by the way, this movie is written and directed by Pozzi Ponzaroli, and very interesting filmmaker. I interviewed him earlier in the week. And yeah, did this movie really hit high for you?
Yeah, this movie did hit very high for me. We're talking a lot about the story and being very meat and potatoes and lean and all these things. I think this is like a textbook. This could literally be taught in classes on how to create a narrative very effectively, mostly visually, not a lot of exposition. There's a little bit, but I could see this being done in a totally opposite way and being just clunky. But instead, I mean, for example, we talked about at the beginning of it. I think about it, how it just starts and it, scans across the grave of the dead mom and wife. You see the father and the son for a little bit, and then you see just a horse appear, a riderless horse appear at the top of the hill right next to their house. They walk up to the horse. There's blood on the saddle. Like, that's how you tell something has happened. There's blood on the saddle. Another little simple spots in here. I mean, I always think about, I don't know where I heard this. This is kind of an old chestnut, but there's only two stories, right? You've probably heard this before too. There's two stories. A stranger rides into town, a stranger rides out of town. Every other thing is just embellishment. This literally has a stranger ride into town. That's the beginning of the story. So one other point early on, you talk about him finding the satchel, but little touches that show how awesome and how effectively this is written. Because he gets the guy, he puts the mud, I forget what they call that, where they kind of cover up the wound with some mud to kind of hold it in and hold the blood in. And, he kind of gets him going on the horse, and he's about to leave, and he sees the satchel of money. And he doesn't just take it and go. He looks at it for a second, and he says, nope. And he walks away from it. And then it's like, you just told us without having to tell us, this is the crucial, pivotal moment in the story. The minute he goes back from that note, everything is in play. He can't get away from it. This is a great, great movie. I can't imagine Western or non-Western fans wouldn't enjoy this movie. It's just awesome storytelling.
Is another reason why it's awesome storytelling. Going back to what Eric was saying, is I think that there is some style to it, but there is a lack of embellishment. Eric mentioned Stephen Dorff's character. Stephen Dorff's character, he's a bad guy. There's no Tolstoy type of characterizations with him. He's bad. He's mean. He wants to kill people. He wants the money. Do you like the fact that these characters were pretty much lean? Even the Old Henry's a little bit layered. Did you like the leanness of this narrative?
Yeah, because I think that fits, and visually too. This isn't like a flashy, super stylized looking movie either. It fits the character of the story and the characters themselves, right? This is very straightforward. And when you cross the line of not being straightforward in this world, it's dangerous. And people cross that line in the story. But that being said, Old Henry does some interesting mind tricks, but they show us those in really smart ways too. And I'm not going to talk about it, but it'll be certain things like where he'll place something on a table near somebody on purpose. And you're like, why is he doing that? That's so dumb. And it's like, no, he's doing it on purpose.
Right. Whenever there is any kind of dialogue in Old Henry, there is a reason why it's there. Bruce was mentioning I don't know if it's a dinner sequence, it's a meal sequence between him and the stranger. And it's just a lesser filmmaker, a lesser film. This thing would have just been a horrible exposition dump, but there are a million things that are going on within this conversation. There's memories between these two people. It's like, what is it? The whole Hitchcock thing about the ticking time bomb, right? Like Eric was saying, it's a suspenser. There is an interesting twist that we're not going to give away, but the twist is not a selling point for Old Henry. This is just a really great Western. Just know that it's going to take you in different directions. Very interesting. High marks for all of us. I love this film as well. Another, like Eric was saying, great role for Stephen Dorff, great role for Tim Blake Nelson. Also, I was telling you guys, I was a little bit wistful because I was thinking about all of the lead roles that Tim Blake Nelson should have had within the last 20 years. He's had a great character actor career. Were you surprised at how good he was as a leading man regarding Old Henry, or was this one of these things like, oh, it's a long time coming?
I definitely wasn't surprised. I was happy to see it for sure, especially when you see him in this. I mean, it's one of those parts is like there's no one else that can play that part. There's very few parts like that, but this one's that one for him. And his eyeball acting is on point with his dead eye. He's just like
his eyeball acting is very good too.
I ain't seen no one come on down here, but sure as I do, I let you know.
I just dawned on me when you asked that question. I never thought about it just now, but I think one of the reasons he works so perfectly for this, because his character in this movie is, in his own life, he is kind of a character actor or a side character in his own life, right? He isn't someone who shines out. By having the actor be that kind of person, when he twists it, and all of a sudden you see that, oh, he is more than we think he is. It works even better by having him as the actor in that role. Like if you had put, I don't know, Brad Pitt in this role, or pick another, really main lead actor.
Matt Damon.
This wouldn't work near as well, because the whole point is he isn't that kind of character in the life he lives.
And he's also kind of got that sort of like with this, just the way he carries himself. He's got like a lot more vulnerability. But then you see him kind of come out of that sometimes, and you can see that I ain't going one to tell you one more time. I already told you once, But when he gets serious, you know that he means business. But then he seems like a pushover a lot of the time. But he is not.
I wrote this quote down right to that. At one point, he says to somebody, he says, "You got the wrong pig by the ear." And I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah, I like when Stephen Dorff's character asks Old Henry, "Where are you from?" And Henry just immediately says, "Everywhere but here," meaning don't F with him. He is a stranger. He's a stranger in a strange land, and you don't want to mess with Old Henry. Again, possibly a top 5 for Eric Holmes. Bruce and I both really love it. Old Henry, the only bad thing, it's not going to be on video on demand. It's not going to be streaming. This is a theatrical release on Friday, October 1st. Hopefully it's playing. Yes, Eric.
I will be going to the theater to watch this.
Oh, very cool. This is worth watching in the theaters. Oh, let's not forget.
Absolutely.
We're talking about the philosophical stuff, the lean narrative, and the performances. Yes, this has shootouts. So if you're in it for some gunplay.
Some really good ones too. Like,
yeah.
This shit gets brutal.
Right. Oh, very, very quickly. I haven't put it up on our Cinematics Patreon yet. Both Bruce and Eric actually got to listen to my full interview. The director, he talks about how he changed the ending of the film. And if you see the ending of this movie, it's very memorable, but it would have been interesting to see what he would have done with that separate ending. And so you can listen to that down the line for our Patreon members. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, which I may very well not, but I do seem to recall that when you asked them about that, they were shooting, and pretty much everything that's at the end is almost everything they shot, because they were just on a time crunch, which is even more impressive that this movie is as good as it is.
I can't believe they were able to get, without giving too much away, all of those shots in, right, Bruce? All of those shots in within, like you said, Eric, within several hours. Sun was going down. They were going to lose a light, and they're going to lose that location. Amazing. Okay. Speaking of amazing, so that is Old Henry, Friday, October 1st. If it's playing in the theaters, Eric Holmes will see it now. Another movie, speaking of amazing, Titane.
Well, no one told me about her, the way she lied but it's too late to say you're sorry. How would I know? Why should I care? Please don't bother trying to find her. She's not there. Well, let me tell you about the way she looked, the way she acted, the color of her hair. Her voice was soft and cool, her eyes were clear and bright, but she's not there.
Also opens in theaters Friday, October 1st. Little first world problems that I'm gonna complain. Eric and Bruce rarely ever complain, but I'm not gonna raise a hissy fit. I'm just gonna say this. All three of us received the screening link for only 24 hours. So as soon as it plopped in our respective email, we had 24 hours to watch Titane. And we were all under the gun. Were you guys able to see it within that 24 hours? Were you going on hour 22 and you needed to see it, or did you guys see it immediately?
Well, when I got home from work, I was kind of planning to see it anyway, or watch something anyway. So that it was easy for me, but that's only because it just happened to, the timing fell pretty perfect on my end.
Yeah, Bruce, let me guess. You watched it 10 seconds after you got the email? Is that what you did? Did you watch it while the email was coming?
I was at work. And I worked till nearly 11 o'clock at night. So I went home, I watched an hour of it, went to bed at midnight, got up at 5:30, finished it. Oh my God. Before we had to drive to Nashville. So I'm like, I'm not missing out on this movie because I've been hearing about this movie for a while. So
Bruce, I'm going to hand this to you because you actually, out of all three of us, you were the one who actually requested that we actually flag Titane down, written and directed by Julia. I'm messing up her name, Ducerneau. She's best known for her 2016 film Raw. I look at the plot summary. It's not giving any plot summary away. So I want to throw this to you, Bruce. What can we say about this movie plot-wise?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, what the plot summary says something really weird, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it just says a metal highly resistant to heat and corrosion. It's just defining Titane with
is that what it says?
Strength alloys often used in medical prosthesis due to its pronounced biocompatibility. I think I'm going to just start off with this. The movie starts with the main character in Titane. I would say it starts off with the main character, and she is essentially a child in the beginning. Okay. What is her name? Her name is Alexia. Yeah. Alexia. And that's played by Agatha Roussel. And I'm messing up her name. She is fantastic. By the way, she's fantastic in this movie. Her first film ever. I can't believe she knocked this one on the park. But it doesn't start with her. It starts with a younger version of herself, younger Alexia. She's in the backseat of the car with her father. They're driving. She is being a little bit obstinate, and he's not being very loving to his daughter. They have a car accident, goes into a surgery. What happens is Alexia, as a child, she is affixed in her head. She is now living the rest of her life with a metal plate in her head. There is a fusion between humanity and steel. And as she grows up, then it cuts to her in present day, where we realize Alexia is a very, sorry about that text. That was a text from Anderson Cowan saying thank you to me. We're going to mention Anderson Cowan in a second later in our review of American Night. I think Eric Holmes is going to really like that part. But anyways, Alexia is now, it cuts to her in present day where she's dancing in this sort of car exhibition thing. And she's dancing provocatively with other women. And it's really grabs your attention. But that's one part of the story, and you think it's gonna be one thing, and it gets to be Alexia gets to be there's a lot of violence in the first half, and in the second half, we're introduced to another character named Vincent, played by Vincent Linden. Vincent, his son has been missing for years, and he is a lonely firefighter who, more than anything, understandably wants his son back. He cannot let go of the fact that his son might be permanently missing, might have passed away years ago. Ultimately, the lives of Vincent and Alexia, they cross paths in the middle of the movie. And what starts off as a very violent exercise in cinema, and it's stomach churning to the point, it becomes something else when these two strangers, their lives intersect. And I think that's as far as I want to take it. Bruce and Eric, if you want to take it further, you can. You have the permission, but I want, what else did I not embellish upon or talk about that should be mentioned regarding plot synop?
I don't think I would bring anything else up in the plot synopsis. I think that really gives people a good idea, especially the idea to me that this is kind of inverted from what you think the normal like pacing or path would be. You'd expect the first half of a movie to be a little more, slower and build up to a very ferocious climax. This does the exact opposite. So I bet you some people will feel let down by that. This is not this is an unusual movie. Movie Bears podcast, William Linda saw this at Fantastic Fest the same day I think we were watching the screener. And he had said he loved this movie, but he didn't know who to recommend it to. And all I could come up with is a lot of people, first of all, will not like this movie. We can probably all agree to that. This is not for your...
And why, you think? Because of the excess, the violence,
yeah, and also narratively, it's quite unusual, and it could be very off-putting to people. Both of our lead characters, I guess you could say there's two lead characters. She's the main lead, but both of the lead characters have a lot of personality traits or activities that could be highly frowned upon, and people might just check out, not be connected to them. I would say that if I was going to suggest it to anybody, it would be people who liked or were interested in the French Extremity series of films, for sure. I had mentioned to William Lindis that if people who really enjoyed Climax last year or the year before by Noé would probably like this. People who hated it would probably hate this. Whether you like it or hate it, though, I think anyone would be able to recognize that the performance by Agathe Roussel is amazing, visceral, physically brutal. I think, and his performance, what's the guy? Vincent Lindon. He's amazing too.
They're not going to get it, but they both deserve Oscar nominations for their work in this movie. It's very intense. The lengths they go to this movie. Alexia, what's so funny is there's not a lot of exposition dumps with her. It's really all about, Eric was mentioning Tim Blake Nelson's eyes. It's all about her eyes and her body language in this movie as well, which is very raw and real. This is a very interesting movie. Also, Garance Marillier, she was the lead in Raw. She has a small role in this one as well. So there's a little bit of a continuation there. And yeah, Eric Holmes, Titane, your thoughts on the movie?
This feels like, watching Raw seemed kind of like the director working up to this. Like this, like if you've seen Raw, this is the next natural progression. And I think this is definitely a lot better because this kind of plays like narratively it's confusing, but I think you have to watch this not as a narrative story, but like it's metaphor, like her, crashing the car. And it might not be about this, but this is what I got. There's sexual frustration, gender frustration with the main character and her trying to hide it, and her surrogate father kind of looking the other way. And like I think he kind of knows what's up, but he just kind of puts on airs. And so it's like it's this relationship dynamic with them. But the stuff that's happening isn't the stuff that's important. It's kind of the stuff that happens in the narrative is kind of like a proxy for something else that's going on internally. And
a good read.
I didn't really pick up on it at first. I just thought it was some weird thing where some chick bangs a car. And that's kind of how it was sold. But this is a lot better than that. And I think he goes a lot deeper. And it's also like one of those movies, like, I'll be honest, a lot of this movie went right over my head, but the stuff I did pick up on, we've talked about Lose a Flower of Evil being so dense that you watch it and you start picking up. This is another one of those type of movies that you can watch it and dismiss it as pretentious bullshit. And maybe you're right. You could dismiss it as just being violent for violence sake or weird for weird sake. Maybe you're right. But I got enough out of this and picked up enough clues as to what I think it might be going for that I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt and kind of go back and kind of dissect it a little more and kind of really, really grasp what it is that their filmmaker is trying to say. And that ending was just heartbreaking. Yep. As fucking weird as it was, I just got in that moment emotionally. I was like, oh, that's
emotional powerhouse ending. And I think you were talking about dissecting, Eric. I think that's one. Bruce, do you agree with that's probably one of the great things about this movie? You can have so many different interpretations about what this movie is about. It could be like Eric was saying, that maybe by proxy it might be just a fever dream of the original character, and maybe it could be an allegory for something else, or you could look at everything literally. You could do that. But there are so many different reads you can have for Titane. I just thought this movie was very rich I don't know if I would recommend it to everyone. Just people who really want to push their own limits when it comes to cinema watching. If you're really into an experience, an overall experience, whether you love it or not, I think Titane is highly recommended. The only caveat I have for this is there is some very shocking, violent moments where in the beginning, when there's a moment where it's a meet and greet moment. I'm gonna just say a meet and greet moment that I'm just watching. I think it's gonna go one way, and I get scared, and then I get terrified because it goes a completely different way, and it just grossed me out. Oh my God, Bruce, you were gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna say I totally agree with. First of all, I totally agree with Eric. I think there's a ton of readings here. There definitely is a lot of stuff going on about gender fluidity, about family, about accepting people, about, you know, broken people finding their families. There's a lot of stuff about that in here. And I think it can hit pretty emotionally deep. But I also absolutely agree with you on the very guarded recommendation to people, because I mean, we, at least Eric and I, and you to some degree too, and we watch horror movies and see some pretty violent stuff and don't get that freaked out by it. This is one of those movies that I feel like, first of all, I love this director's watch her for sure. You feel this movie. I feel like this movie just, it like, you know how you see some movies and you might emotionally or intellectually, it kind of gets you. This feels like you physically feel it. Like you talked about the scene that got you. To me, there's a scene in a bathroom where she's just trying to change her identity. I'm not going to say how she does that.
Yeah.
And you're just cringing at what's going to happen. I mean, you feel the intensity of what's about to happen. And when it happens,
they telegraph that too. So it's like, you know, it's coming. It's like,
but there's just scenes in here where she's like just scratching herself. And it's just like, oh my God. I don't know how to describe it. And that was in the first movie too. In Raw, there was some scenes like that too. She has something that's really, I don't know how to describe it, but she has something very special about the way that she puts stuff right in your face in a way that you can't avoid it.
She also started both movies with a car crash, like someone causing a car crash, like on purpose.
That's true.
And then, yeah, the scratching thing, like it's kind of like but we're doing the Leos Carax thing, and notice like all the little things that kind of seem to pop up in all his movies. And she's just got the two that I've seen, but there's definitely some similarities. That, and just between Raw and this one, I like how she's getting more esoteric and weird, like not afraid to make it more abstract. And I'm really very curious to see where she goes with next. Is she going to go even more crazy with it? Or maybe is she just going to, you know, who knows? I mean, maybe she just comes back and does like, you know, just some regular indie drama. You never know. She could probably do anything at this point, just so long as it's not a comic book movie. I'm fine with whatever she does. I was
gonna say, you know how some directors come out and they slowly grow on you, and you finally kind of see like, oh my God, this director is really amazing. And then some directors like hit you in the face right out of the gate, and you're just like, holy shit. I mean, this is like Scorsese did that. When Scorsese came out with the first three movies that he had, like the big ones that everyone caught really fast. I mean, everyone was like, what the fuck? This guy's just, you know, and people hated it and loved it at the same time. There's this kind of this very strong reaction to it. And I feel like she's on that kind of a trajectory.
I would like to be a fly on the wall and see what David Cronenberg would feel once he saw Titane. He must have been very, very proud and very amazed by how awesome this movie is, right? Because
the body horror is strong with this one.
Yes.
Strong as titanium, you might say.
Oh, very. Eric Holmes, you should be quoted for you should do a movie quote. That's a great quote. The body horror is strong. Yes, this is a body horror film. We forgot to mention that. Body horror film for Titane hits theaters on Friday, October 1st. This is one of my top 10. Wondering about how high is this for you, Bruce?
It's still kind of, I'm seeping in with it. It's on my list for sure. I don't know where it'll end up, but it's on my list
to consider. And Eric, this is, whether it's top 10 or not, it's still a very good experience for you overall.
Yeah, this is a movie that's gonna kind of like, I already like it better now than I did when I first watched it. Like, it's like the further away I get from it, the more I consider the movie and the more I actually like it. So actually that 24-hour window probably helped, because that was a couple days ago, so we had a couple days to sit on it, as opposed, because like if I was reviewing this movie like right after I got done watching it, I'd be like, I don't know what I just watched.
Did we also mention there's humor? There is humor in this too. It doesn't sound like there's any humor, but there's a scene where she walks up and goes, and I'm not going to say what's happening in the scene. She goes like, "How many of you are there?" And I was just like, "Holy shit!"
Or just before that, where she was sitting on a guy's face.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was so good.
Yeah, very interesting movie, Titane. Again, let's do warning. Bruce, who do we warn people about seeing? Do not see this if you what?
This is very violent.
Yeah, violence a number one. Yeah.
Okay, but all of us love Titane. Friday, October 1st. Again, like Old Henry, both of them are in theaters.